in many, but yeah, I did start recording. So.
Oh, okay.
But we're back you're back. You've been gone for a little bit here.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about
Sure.
Since maybe people don't necessarily know what you kind of went through, just a brief synopsis of why you were gone and
I would
whatever.
love to talk about it. So one of the blessings of being a pastor is we have continuing education opportunities. And so I took my 2 weeks of continuing education and I went to Mexico. And the reason I got there is because there is a mission organization there called Amextra. And it works with local Mexican people to help them improve their lives. And it's a Christian organization. And interestingly, our offerings that we give to Prince of Peace, some of those go to the ELCA, our larger church body, and some of those offerings then go to support Amextra. So we got to see where some of our offerings go. And to stay there, we were in Mexico City and we stayed at this place called the Lutheran Center, which is a dorm on the campus of the University of Mexico. And it's surrounded by other denominations that have their centers there, but there's like kitchens and little dorm rooms. And so a bunch of us pastors and spouses, if we brought them, which I did, we got to stay in these dorms. And then we were brought out to see some of the work that Amextra is doing. We also were given the opportunity for some cultural immersion experiences, which I think are equally as important because it's a completely different culture, and if we only believe what we're told about it, we don't understand what the culture is. A lot of people that live around our congregation come from places south of the border, and being more versed in their culture will help us serve them better and grow with them better. But two of the big things that Amextra does that I got to actually go visit. One was an after-school program. Up in the mountains, the traffic in Mexico City is really bad, unbelievably bad. So it took us 2.5 hours to get up into the mountains. It wasn't really that far. But we got up there and we visited this building that's there, and children will come there after their school day. And there are people that they're called volunteers. I think they get a stipend. And they themselves travel about 1.5 hours each way to come and serve these children. And they teach them nonviolence, and they teach them about God, and they do activities with them and give them snacks. And it really becomes just a very safe place for children to go. Sadly, a lot of these children that are living in poverty, they don't have parents to go home to at the end of the day. Their parents might be working, and with this type of traffic, they might not be that far away, but really hard to get to. And sadly, they live with a lot of violence. It might be in their homes. It might be gang-related, out in the streets, at school, bullying at school. I asked, how do you teach these children nonviolence when they have so little control in their lives? And they really bring in a psychologist, and they talk about how to de-escalate and mainly how to check in with yourself. How are you feeling in this situation? Help the children name their feelings and teach them that they don't have to respond in violence, even when violence is coming at them. And then teach them safe places they can go, whether it is this building, this school, this after-school program, or maybe there are leaders in the community they can go to for help. They just try to help the kids work with what they have available and grow up to be people that don't resort to violence first and foremost. So that was really inspiring, and the kids were just adorable, and they all spoke Spanish. None of the kids spoke English. There were a couple of people that could translate. I had a wonderful time with a little girl. I was using my rudimentary Spanish, and she was so confused and trying to help me. And anyway, we did some art projects together, and it was very sweet.
Yeah.
The other thing we went to was a microfinance building. Amextra supports microfinance throughout Mexico, and this was the one in Mexico City, and it looks like a bank the downstairs, there's tellers, there's windows, people come and go. And then upstairs, there's meeting spaces. But what they do is they offer small loans at very low interest so people can get started. It might be $150. So some people that we talked to, they got a loan to start a salon or start a store, and they might start with just a table in their driveway and grow from there. Over time, they pay off their loan. All of them are paid off within a year. And then if they want to grow their business, they might get another loan, and they can do that for a while until they finally get on their feet. Two really cool things about this, though, that make it work, because I learned that microfinance in general fails because big banks get involved and it becomes more of a profit generating thing instead of a community building thing. So two cool things. One is that in order to apply for a loan, you need to have 8 individuals also applying. So it's not just you, it's your whole community. And they all get their own loans and they all have their own terms, but they apply at the same time and they see themselves as like a cohort. So if one business owner has a tough month, the others are pledging then to help support that one business owner through the hard times. And they succeed together. So you're lifting up the entire community. And then the other cool thing is that once you get to a point where you don't need loans anymore and you're actually doing fine and you have everything you need, you can invest back into the program, and they're giving interest rates up to like 9%.
Wow.
So these people in poverty are learning how to grow their money wisely and invest in their communities. So they're doing great, and it's very inspiring, and it just makes me dream about what could happen here at our home too. And certainly we can't do the same things, but maybe we can get inspiration from some of the things that work really well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had mentioned like the cultural difference, right? And so I think this actually leads quite well into the story that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And your theme was trust.
Yes.
So with Ruth and Naomi and all of that, let's dive into, I mean, we've talked on this podcast kind of through all of like the, where they've been, even talking about Naomi wanting to be called Mara because of bitterness and all that stuff. But we were stopped at, there was kind of getting ready for a switch, something good to happen. So what was that goodness?
The goodness was Naomi took that risk of placing her trust in Ruth and in the future and in God. She had been bitter for a long time, and all she saw was failure. And Ruth had been trustworthy to her, even when Naomi didn't seem to recognize this gift that Ruth was giving her. She tried to persuade Ruth not to come along. She tried to say, go back. Your life is going to be better without me. And Ruth wouldn't give up. So Ruth hung on, and she worked really hard. I don't know what Naomi was doing while Ruth was out in the fields gleaning, picking up all the grain. I suppose maybe she wasn't physically capable of doing that. I don't know if maybe Ruth brought the grain home and Naomi was able to prepare it. I don't know her response to that. But the first response we get out of Scripture is that she starts to think that things might work out. There might be some hope. And so she starts to share her own ideas, her wisdom, her experience, her relatives, the inside scoop of what she knows about Bethlehem and the people who are there with Ruth. Because Ruth now is the foreigner. I mean, Naomi met Ruth in Ruth's homeland, where Ruth knew how everything worked. And now they're in Naomi's homeland, and Ruth doesn't know how anything works. She's just doing her very best. And now Naomi is going to contribute. And even if nothing else were to work out from this point on, it shows that Naomi is reciprocating, that she realizes that this is a relationship now that she can trust. Ruth isn't running away. they can build on something together. So they become a team. And that is really the turning point. Naomi chooses to stop looking at all that's wrong and starts to dream about what goodness could be in her future.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible
Yeah.
how that switch happens, but
Right.
probably happened over a period of time, I assume, right?
I think so. They probably didn't record for us all of the notations Naomi was making, like, oh, Ruth came back again. Oh, she came back again.
Right.
Is she going to keep coming back?
Right.
Or is she going to run now that it's really hard?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I think it was definitely time consuming. And that's the thing about trust. You don't generally just trust right off the bat. You have experience, you see what's happening, and then you start to build that trust.
Okay. Let's talk about what is Boaz's role in this story.
Well, yeah, it seems like he's just a good guy. He sees people in need, and he is not hoarding his own wealth. And he obviously has some farmland that is producing well. And instead of saying, I just want to squeeze every drop out of this for myself, he sees people in need, and he makes a point of being generous.
Which was kind of, I mean, like back before, we walked through like the importance of the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was leaving the grain
Right.
on the outside so that people with less or nothing could glean off of that
Right.
and pick through it. So it's going back to the way that God kind of intended the whole shalom, right? The whole shalom to work together. So, and from what I picked up from Paul, he was saying that, well, Boaz is actually connected to Amalek, right? Who is Naomi's husband?
Yes, they were relatives. Yes. So it was Boaz's job to help out Naomi and her family. I don't know how much of that anybody knew outside of Naomi's head. So I think it seems to be that Naomi is the one putting the pieces together, because it's very possible that Ruth went to glean and never made a connection between Boaz and Naomi either. I don't know when the light switch came on, except after Naomi got involved and saying, oh, he is my kinsman and he can have a role in this as well. But even before that happens, Boaz just turns out to be a good person. And it makes me reflect on all of us who get like a regular paycheck and we're living okay. And do we look at our paycheck and think, wow, I better leave some around the edges? You know, I better make sure that I'm taking care of other people too with this. Certainly when we give our offerings and our tithes, we're doing that. I wonder if we're thinking about it in the same way, though. It was so visceral, so personal for him. He could see the people in need gathering what he had left over. So he was a good person, a very generous heart, and I think we could learn a lot just from him. But then when it was brought to his attention that he had like a legal obligation to Naomi's family, he also stepped up, and he didn't shy away from that. And I don't know that everybody would jump at the opportunity to add more people to their family and change his lifestyle. I know that polygamy was a thing back then. It doesn't seem like he had another wife. I mean, he's sleeping on the threshing floor. I don't know if he had another family anywhere else. I'm guessing not. But still, it's going to change his whole life if he starts taking responsibility for these other people. And he seems like he's not afraid to do that.
Mm. So how does that come about?
So I will tell you, this book has some racy elements in it.
That's okay.
Yes.
Because I think it's important, like we were talking about before a little bit. I think the church tends to kind of put a distance between that for some reason, because we aren't somehow human beings or something like that. Like,
Well, and I mean, if people knew where these parts of the Bible are, I bet they would read them more, you know?
I mean, you had mentioned something about a confirmation class
yeah.
like earlier
These are
today.
the passages I love to bring up in confirmation because the kids get so excited. I mean, there's a lot of graphic things in the Bible. The kids, when they find out that it's not just all, platitudes about living a good life, they start to understand not only that this Bible is a really interesting series of stories, but also these people in the Bible are real people, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're more relatable when you realize that they went through some stuff. So Naomi's plan at revealing to Boaz his job involved some putting some placement of Ruth in a particular situation so that Boaz couldn't help but notice. And so, guys, if you want to know this verse, I left it out of our reading this weekend, but you can read it for yourself. It's in Ruth chapter 3, and it is I'll start with verse 3, but it's verse 4 we're focusing on. These are Naomi's instructions to Ruth. Now, do as I tell you. Take a bath and put on perfume and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, which is where Boaz is sleeping. But don't let Boaz see you until he has finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down. Okay, so let's get this image. So Boaz, it's the end of the workday. He's hot, he's tired. And now she's sending this beautifully nice smelling bathed woman to go find him. But don't show yourself yet. Let him get fed and drunk. So make sure he's really, really relaxed and happy. So Naomi is setting this whole scene up. This is her plotting. And then she says, be sure to notice where he lies down. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do. So let me just say the word feet is a euphemism here. And
okay.
I will let your imaginations go where they go. There's quite a few euphemisms in the Bible because the people writing the Hebrew, they didn't want to spell it out either. But if somebody came and took the blanket off your feet, I don't know that it would matter if they were perfumed and bathed and whatever else, and that you were drunk and well-fed. So she's uncovering a portion of Boaz's anatomy that makes him take notice. And then she says, Boaz will tell you what to do. So Naomi herself isn't going to go that much farther, but she is setting up a meeting between Ruth and Boaz that neither one of them will mistake.
Okay.
They will acknowledge that their relationship might need to be taken to another level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But has she up until this point? He has had interactions with Ruth, like out in the field,
right.
and had told both his servant, male servant, or whoever they are, don't touch her.
Yeah.
And also said, you are welcome to the water and all this stuff, and please hang out with the women as well. So it doesn't seem like, it's not like this is quite out of nowhere. There's been some sort of a development of, or at least some sort of connection previously as far as like, that she exists. Right.
He noticed her. And so we're left to wonder, what about her caused him to notice her? I read it up to this point that he saw a vulnerable, needy woman who was a foreigner, and he's protecting her from situations she might not be able to handle. But it could also be that he saw this beautiful woman and he's trying to be very chivalrous and take care of her and show her the best side of himself too. Right. I don't know. Yes, you're right. They did know who each other were. But this moment takes it to another level.
Totally. I don't know if we haven't talked about this on the podcast as far as the book of Ruth, but do we know as far as like the author goes, like where does this book come from as far as like, do we have any ideas on who the author is and kind of what the purpose?
That's a really good question.
And it's okay if you don't know.
The purpose, I know that there's one really big purpose of this story because of the lineage that's going to follow from
Right.
Ruth and Boaz. And when you read the genealogy of Jesus, like in the book of Matthew, there are a few, just like 3 women mentioned. And the very interesting thing is they are not all Jewish women. And Ruth is one of them. There's also Rahab, who was a prostitute, who's listed in there. And this is so intentional, but we miss it by not knowing the Jewish history. But it's really intentional that in the lineage of Jesus, there were foreigners introduced. That it's not like a pure line of Jewish Hebrew people straight to Jesus. There were foreigners introduced and welcomed, and not all of the women that participated in his lineage are named, but Ruth is. And so this is a really significant development in the story of Jesus, that we understand that Ruth was a Moabite, that she was brought in, that this wasn't necessarily the way all of the other people, the Israelites at that time, had planned genealogy to work. But this is simply what is, and this is what God is using to bring Jesus as the Savior of the world. So even to the point where, like, Joseph and Mary, and Joseph has to adopt Jesus. And so families can be kind of messy and complicated, and Jesus' family is no different. And I think that's really important for us to understand that, we look at our family trees and maybe there's individuals we're not proud of there, and there's people who are like, where did that come from? Especially anybody doing their ancestry, they're trying to do their cheek swabs and find out their DNA, and they might be really surprised about what they find there. But Jesus' genealogy is also messy, and it's also what God planned. So we can see from an overview that God is at work in all these little details that seem to be wrong to us, but God is still at work making them happen for God's glory.
Right. Yeah. Because it over what it kind of dispels is this idea that things need to be perfect in order for God to work through you and God to be a part of your life. And this happens in everyday life. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, God is working with all different types of people, and Jesus, being born as the Savior of the world, he came from more people than Jewish people too. So in his DNA, there are other people besides this one race, and that makes him more relatable, I think, to those of us in the world that maybe don't share that particular genetic line.
Right. What do you think the importance is, obviously, in nowadays, right? Especially with what's going on nationally, especially with immigrants being, unfortunately, I think, immigrants being taken away and all that stuff. What do you think our job as a church is to do in that instance?
Well, I mean, if we're going to turn to this book of Ruth, first of all, I look at Moab, where Naomi and her family had to immigrate. And there is not a single word that they were unwelcome, that things were taken from them, that, in fact, the boys were able to marry the women of Moab. And I see a sense that a family in need was welcomed and cared for, even though they weren't Moabite. And then flip it around, Ruth comes back to Bethlehem, to Israelite territory, and then she is also treated very well. And her needs are being met. And nobody's saying, well, you don't deserve this because you weren't born here. So you weren't born here, and let us show you the best of ourselves, and let us help you out. That, I think, is a good clue for how we are called to behave, because we just don't know that person we're helping out could be the mother, the grandmother of the Savior of the world. I mean, so we don't know these people that don't look like us and don't talk like us, the dominant culture, I should say, not just us, but they don't maybe fit in with the dominant culture. We don't know how God is working in their lives for a purpose that could be a blessing to all of us. And how dare we think that we get to choose if they're going to be a blessing or not.
Yeah. Yep.
We don't know at all what God is up to in their lives. So I think even if we're not feeling it, it would be wise to err on the side of compassion and generosity, because God might be inviting us to participate in a really amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then we can go all the way to Jesus, and he was forced to flee his homeland due to violence, and he had to immigrate to Egypt, and he was cared for in Egypt. So he knows what it is. His family knows what it is to flee from violence and persecution. Eventually they got to go home. Not everybody does, but eventually they got to go back to their homeland. But if Jesus had to experience this type of displacement, then certainly his heart is with displaced people. And we only serve him when we serve displaced people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What else do we have as far as with this story? Is there anything kind of further on?
Well, yeah, I don't want to steal the thunder from the fourth chapter.
No, totally.
It's going to be amazing because that is just full of fireworks.
This is where Paul looks into the camera and says, "Don't read ahead. Don't read ahead."
At this point, they can, though, because it's coming up on Sunday.
Yes.
So I don't want to get too much into that, although we have talked about it a little bit. But I just think that Ruth is a good example of how we can care for others. I would have probably changed the name of this book if it was up to me, to Naomi, because I think it's more Naomi's story than Ruth's.
Oh, yeah.
But Ruth is the one that kind of wins the day. I mean, if Naomi had been left to her own bitter self, she would have made her own way back to Bethlehem probably and spent the rest of her life feeling very bitter, unless somebody else popped up to ease her suffering.
But then also, given that Ruth is the lineage of Jesus, right?
For sure.
So technically Naomi is, I mean, she's affiliated. Relationally, she's there, but it's not a direct lineage because she is no longer married to her son.
Absolutely.
And so the heirs that are produced come from Boaz.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So Ruth is a great example. I also love that it's a woman that's been lifted up as a leader and somebody that is making a difference in the story of God on earth. And we don't get enough of the women's names to be able to celebrate that as much. It ends up seeming more like the men were doing the activity. We don't have, we talk a lot about Abraham. It's so easy to gloss over the importance Sarah played in the whole thing. And this one doesn't gloss it over. We get to really focus on some of the key women that were important in the story of Jesus too.
And I know that you had touched on it a bit in your sermon, but talking about this being a patriarchal society.
Yes.
As compared to now, that is less acceptable in general as a society.
Right.
Can you talk about the importance of that and why it's important to understand where patriarchy plays its proper role, right, back in this time, as compared to, nowadays you shouldn't necessarily need to be relying on the guys calling all the shots and whatever else.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is the way that society was organized. And for better or for worse, we don't understand the story unless we understand that's the way the society was organized. And I have to say, around the world, that's not the way every society was organized. But this one was. Going back to Mexico, one of the cultural things we did is we toured an ancient temple that it was a pyramid. There was actually a few pyramids in this place. And we learned that the Puebla people who had settled there, the women had all the most important jobs. They were the hunters and they were the best warriors and they were the decision makers and the leader in the culture. And you see that through their art and through some of the burials they've uncovered, the women with all their weapons and their helmets. And So it's not how every society was organized, but that's the way this one was. And so if we don't understand that, we don't understand how very massive it was that these women were able to have their name be known and remembered, and all the things that they had to go through in order to be able to just do what they were called to do. So I guess it helps us respect what has happened more with the women. And the men, they were doing the best they can too, I believe. And they were working in their own society with their own expectations placed on them. And this is just the way the story came about, not necessarily the way God wants all societies to be organized. I think God is really happy that women have more authority and power now. And eventually, hopefully, equality for all is the thing we'll get to as a society, as a world. But this is our history, and it's good to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I think we've done a great job of diving in here. Thanks again for your time in coming in and recording this. If you guys have any questions or comments or whatnot, please feel free to reach out to communications@popmn.org. We appreciate that. And thank you for spending your time here today listening, and we look forward to having you back.